Welcome to Certified Data Engineer Associate DEA-C01 Practice Exam Number 10. You'll get 30 exam-style questions. I will read each question, then give you a 10-second countdown to review the answer choices on screen. Feel free to pause the video if you need longer. After each countdown, I will reveal the correct answer and explanation. Question 1. Northwind Corp uses Amazon QuickSight for business intelligence dashboards. The marketing team requires row-level security so that regional managers can only see data for their assigned regions, while the finance team needs certain salary columns hidden from non-executive users. Which QuickSight addition and feature combination is required? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option D. QuickSight Enterprise Edition is required because column-level security, CLS, is only available in Enterprise Edition. Row-level security, RLS, is available in both Standard and Enterprise Editions, but since the requirement includes both RLS for regional filtering and CLS for hiding salary columns, Enterprise Edition is necessary. RLS cannot restrict column access, only row access based on user or group rules. IAM policies do not control data visibility within QuickSight dashboards at the row or column level. Question 2. Contoso Pharma stores clinical trial data in Amazon S3. Regulatory compliance requires that certain objects cannot be deleted or overwritten for 7 years, even by the root user. The data engineer needs to configure the appropriate S3 protection mechanism. Which configuration meets this requirement? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. S3 Object Lock in Compliance Mode provides the strongest protection where no user, including the root user, can delete or overwrite protected objects until the retention period expires. This meets regulatory requirements that mandate immutable data retention. Governance Mode allows users with the S3 bypass governance retention permission to override the retention, which means privileged users, including the root user, could potentially remove the protection, failing the compliance requirement. A bucket policy denying deletions can be modified or removed by authorized administrators, providing no guarantee against intentional deletion. S3 versioning with MFA delete adds a layer of protection, but does not prevent the root user from deleting version IDs and does not provide true worm protection. Question 3. A data engineer at a Datum Corp needs to transfer 50 TB of historical log data from an on-premises NFS file server to Amazon S3. The company has a 1 Gbps AWS Direct Connect link. The transfer must complete within 7 days while allowing the production NFS server to continue serving other workloads during business hours. Which solution should the data engineer use? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option C. AWS DataSync provides high-speed data transfer at up to 10 Gbps with an on-premises agent deployed near the NFS file server. DataSync supports bandwidth throttling, allowing the data engineer to limit transfer speed during business hours to avoid impacting production NFS workloads and run at full speed during off-peak hours. DataSync also handles scheduling, integrity verification with checksums, and resume capability for interrupted transfers. At 1 Gbps, 50 TB can be transferred in approximately 5 days, fitting within the 7-day window. The AWS CLI S3 Sync command lacks built-in bandwidth throttling and transfer scheduling, and provides lower throughput without optimizations. Snowball Edge has a shipping turnaround of 5-7 business days plus data transfer time, risking exceeding the 7-day deadline. Mounting NFS directly to EC01 requires custom scripting for throttling and lacks the built-in reliability features of DataSync. Question 4. Litware Energy runs an Apache Flink application on Amazon Managed Service for Apache Flink that processes IoT sensor readings from wind turbines. The application uses event time processing with watermarks to handle late arriving data. During a recent network outage, some sensor readings arrived 10 minutes late and were dropped. The team needs to capture these late arriving records for separate analysis without modifying the main processing logic. Which Flink feature should the team implement? Select one, review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. Apache Flink side outputs allow late arriving data that falls outside the watermark window to be redirected to a separate stream for analysis without modifying the main processing pipeline. This preserves the existing logic while capturing late records. Increasing the watermark delay to 15 minutes would add significant latency to all processing, affecting the timeliness of results for all records, not just late ones. Switching to processing time eliminates the ability to process events based on when they actually occurred, which is critical for IoT sensor analysis. Checkpointing ensures fault tolerance for application state, but does not address the handling of late arriving event time records. Question 5. Litware Insurance has an Amazon S3 data lake containing policyholder data encrypted with SSCKMS using the default AWS/S3 AWS managed key. The company recently acquired another insurance firm that operates in a separate AWS account. The data engineering team needs to enable the acquired firm's account to read the encrypted S3 data. What should the data engineer do to enable cross-account access? Select one, review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. AWS managed KMS keys, AWS/S3, cannot be shared across accounts because their key policy is fixed and does not allow cross-account access grants. To enable cross-account access to SSCKMS encrypted data, the data must be re-encrypted using a customer-managed KMS key, which has a configurable key policy that can explicitly grant cross-account KMS decrypt permission. The bucket policy must also grant cross-account S3 access. Granting KMS decrypt on the AWS/S3 key fails because the AWS managed key policy cannot be modified to allow cross-account principles. While a cross-account IAM role provides S3 access, it does not solve the KMS decryption problem since the AWS/S3 key cannot be used cross-account even with role assumption. Cross-region replication adds unnecessary complexity and ongoing costs for what is fundamentally an access control problem. Question 6. Adatum Corp has a DynamoDB table storing user session data with a TTL attribute set to expire sessions after 24 hours. The data engineer notices that some expired items are still appearing in query results up to 36 hours after their TTL timestamp has passed. The application is displaying stale session data to users. What should the data engineer do to resolve this issue? Select one, review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. DynamoDB TTL deletions are performed by a background process that can take up to 48 hours after the expiry timestamp to physically remove items. During this period, expired items still appear in queries and scans. The recommended solution is to add a filter expression in the application's read operations to exclude items where the TTL attribute value is less than the current epoch time. This client-side filtering ensures stale sessions are not displayed even before the background process removes them. Note that filter expression is applied after data is read, so it does not reduce RCU consumption, but it prevents expired data from being returned to the application. Increasing write capacity does not affect the TTL background deletion process, which operates independently of table capacity settings. DynamoDB streams with Lambda would add operational complexity and cost for a problem that is inherently solved by filtering at read time. Switching capacity modes has no effect on the TTL deletion schedule, which is managed internally by DynamoDB. Question 7. A A company stores data in various S3 buckets across multiple AWS regions in a production account and requires that every action taken on those S3 buckets be logged in a separate security account. Which solution meets this requirement? Select one answer. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option C. A multi-region CloudTrail trail in the production account captures every API call made on S3 buckets regardless of which region they are in, and can deliver those logs directly to an S3 bucket in the security account for centralized auditing. This provides a complete record of who performed each action and when. Lambda copying new objects only replicates data without recording details about who accessed or modified the data. S3 versioning protects against accidental deletions, but does not log user actions or API calls. AWS config tracks configuration changes to resources over time, but does not capture access events like reads, writes, and deletions on S3 objects. Question 8. Fabricam Financial has an Amazon S3 data lake with 500 TB of historical transaction data stored as CSV files. The analytics team uses Amazon Athena for ad hoc queries, but complains about query costs averaging $2,500 per month. The data is partitioned by year and month. The team wants to reduce Athena costs by at least 90% without changing the partitioning scheme. Which approach will achieve the greatest cost reduction? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. Converting CSV to Parquet with snappy compression typically reduces data size by 9–95% due to columnar storage and efficient compression. Since Athena charges $5 per TB scanned, reducing data volume by 90% plus directly translates to proportional cost savings. Parquet also enables column pruning, so queries reading specific columns scan even less data. S3 intelligent tiering reduces storage costs, not Athena query costs, which are based on data scanned. Byte scan cutoff per query limits spending by failing queries that exceed the threshold, but does not reduce actual costs per query. Redshift Spectrum also charges for data scanned from S3 and requires a Redshift cluster, adding infrastructure costs rather than reducing them. Question 9. Litware Retail is migrating from a self-managed Apache Kafka cluster on EC2 to Amazon MSK. The existing Kafka consumers use SASL/SCRAM authentication with credentials stored in a third-party secrets manager. The data engineer needs to configure MSK authentication that is compatible with SASL/SCRAM while using AWS native credential storage. Which two steps are required? Select 2. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are option A and option C. Amazon MSK supports SASL/SCRAM authentication, where credentials must be stored in AWS Secrets Manager with the required Amazon MSK prefix for the secret name. Both steps are necessary. First, create the secrets with proper naming convention, then associate them with the MSK cluster and enable SASL/SCRAM in the cluster security settings. SASL/IAM is a different authentication mechanism that uses IAM policies instead of username/password credentials, which would require consumer code changes. Systems Manager Parameter Store is not supported for MSK credential storage. Mutual TLS is a certificate-based authentication method, not username/password based like SASL/SCRAM. Question 10. Fabricam Healthcare has an AWS Glue ETL job that processes medical claims data containing nested JSON structures with arrays of diagnosis codes, procedure codes, and provider information. The team needs to flatten these nested structures into separate relational tables so they can be loaded into Amazon Redshift for analysis. Which dynamic frame transformation should the data engineer use? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option C. Relationalize is the dynamic frame transformation specifically designed to flatten nested structures, such as arrays and structs, into multiple relational tables with generated foreign key relationships. It produces a collection of dynamic frames, where the root frame contains scalar fields and separate frames contain array elements linked back to the parent by auto-generated join keys. Apply mapping handles column renaming, typecasting, and restructuring, but does not flatten nested arrays into separate relational tables. Unbox is used to parse string fields that contain embedded structured data like JSON strings into typed structs, not to flatten already parsed nested structures. Resolve choice handles ambiguous data types in a column, but does not flatten nested structures into relational tables. Question 11. Fabricam Energy has a Kinesis data stream with 20 shards receiving IoT sensor data. 5 different consumer applications need to read from the same streams simultaneously. The data engineer observes that consumers frequently receive provision throughput exceeded exception errors. What is the most effective solution to resolve this issue? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. Enhanced Fanout provides each registered consumer with a dedicated 2 MB/s read throughput per shard via HTTP/2 push, eliminating the shared throughput contention that causes provision throughput exceeded exception. With 5 consumers sharing the default 2 MB/s per shard read capacity, each consumer effectively gets only 400 KB/s, which is insufficient. Enhanced Fanout gives each consumer the full 2 MB/s doubling shards, increases total capacity, but does not solve the contention problem because the 5 consumers still share the read throughput on each shard. Increasing retention period does not affect read throughput limits. Exponential backoff reduces error frequency but does not increase the available throughput, resulting in higher latency. Question 12. Contoso Financial operates a data lake on Amazon S3 with over 500 tables registered in the AWS Glue Data catalog. The company has multiple departments including finance, risk, and compliance, each requiring access to different subsets of tables. The data governance team wants to implement a scalable permission model that automatically applies correct permissions when new tables are added to the catalog. The team wants to minimize ongoing maintenance. Which approach should the data engineer recommend? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option C. Lake Formation LFDAGs, tag-based access control, is the recommended approach for managing permissions at scale. LFDAGs decouple policy creation from resource creation, meaning new tables automatically inherit permissions from their parent database's tags without requiring policy updates. When a new table is added to a tagged database, it inherits the database's LFDAGs and the correct permissions are applied automatically. Named resource method requires granting permissions on each individual table, which does not scale and requires updates every time a new table is created. Separate S3 buckets add operational complexity and do not provide fine-grained catalog-level access control. IAM policies for Glue Data catalog tables become unwieldy at scale and require constant maintenance as new tables are added. Question 13. A data engineer at a Datum Retail has a Redshift serverless workgroup. The team needs to query historical sales data stored as Parquet files in S3 alongside current transactional data in Redshift tables. The S3 data resides in the Glacier Instant Retrieval Storage class. The data engineer creates external tables using Redshift Spectrum, but queries against the S3 data fail. What is the cause of the failure? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option C. Redshift Spectrum cannot query data stored in any Glacier storage class, including Glacier Instant Retrieval, Glacier Flexible Retrieval and Glacier Deep Archive. The data must first be restored to S3 Standard or Standard A storage class before Spectrum can access it. This is a critical limitation that applies regardless of the Glacier tier's retrieval speed. Redshift Spectrum fully supports Parquet, ORC, JSON, CSV, and other formats natively. While an incorrect Glue data catalog configuration could cause failures, the question specifies the data is in Glacier Instant Retrieval, which is the actual cause. Redshift Serverless includes Spectrum capabilities at no additional charge. Question 14. A company stores CSV records in Amazon S3 and currently queries them with Athena. They need to also run SQL insert and delete operations on this data with the least development overhead. Which two steps meet this requirement? Select 2, review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are option B and option C. Apache Iceberg is an open table format that supports full ACID transactions, including insert, update, delete, and time travel queries. Amazon Athena natively supports creating Iceberg tables, loading existing data using insert into select, and subsequently running DML operations on them without any additional tooling. Athena handles both the table creation and ongoing data manipulation within a single familiar SQL interface, minimizing development overhead. Redshift Serverless requires copying data from S3 into Redshift, adding a data migration step and introducing a separate service to manage. Delta Lake tables in Athena support only read operations. Athena cannot insert or delete Delta Lake data. Apache Hudi tables do not support Athena insert operations. Hudi manages upserts through its own API, and Athena provides read-only access to Hudi tables. Question 15. A data engineer receives a large batch of updated records monthly for Amazon Redshift, where many records are updates to existing rows. The goal is efficient ingestion with minimal query performance impact. Which strategy should be used? Select one answer. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option D. The merge operation in Amazon Redshift compares records between a staging table and the main table in a single statement. When the join condition finds a match, it performs an update on the main table row with values from the staging table. When no match is found, it performs an insert of the new row. This handles both updates and new records atomically in one operation, minimizing the number of table scans and reducing the window during which the data is inconsistent. The delete then insert approach first removes all matching rows and reinserts them, which creates a gap in data availability and requires 2 full passes over the staging data. Amazon Redshift does not natively support an upsert command. This syntax does not exist in Redshift SQL. Running a glue drop duplicates transformation removes duplicate rows within the staging data, but does not address merging updates back into the main production table. Question 16. Northwind Streaming processes IoT device telemetry using Amazon Kinesis data streams. The stream has 10 shards and 3 consumer applications reading from the stream using the standard shared throughput model. During peak hours, all 3 consumers experience frequent provision throughput exceeded exception errors. The team wants to resolve this without increasing the number of shards. Which solution should the team implement? Select one, review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. Enhanced Fanout provides dedicated 2 MB/s read throughput per consumer per shard via HTTP/2 push using the Subscribe to Shard API. With 3 consumers and 10 shards, the shared model provides only 2 MB/s total per shard shared across all consumers, causing throttling. Enhanced Fanout gives each consumer its own 2 MB/s per shard, 6 MB/s total per shard across all consumers, eliminating the contention. Increasing getRecords call frequency would worsen throttling since the shared model allows only 5 read transactions per second per shard. Exponential backoff reduces errors, but does not solve the throughput limitation. Data Firehose is a delivery service that does not support multiple custom consumer applications reading the same stream. Question 17. A data engineering team at a large e-commerce company notices that Athena query planning time has increased significantly as the number of S3 data partitions has grown. Which approach directly reduces Athena query planning time? Select one answer. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option C. AWS Glue Data Catalog Partition indexes allow the Get Partitions API to fetch only the relevant subset of partitions, instead of loading all partitions and filtering in memory, directly reducing the time spent on metadata retrieval during query planning. Athena Partition Projection goes further by calculating partition values and locations directly from table properties without any data catalog metadata lookup at all, eliminating the remote call entirely for highly partitioned tables. Refining partitioning and bucketing can improve scan efficiency, but does not reduce the partition metadata retrieval overhead that causes planning time increases. EMR S3 dist-cp consolidates files to reduce scan overhead, but does not address the partition metadata lookup latency. Converting to Parquet improves scan performance through column pruning, but does not reduce the time Athena spends retrieving partition metadata before scanning begins. Question 18. Adatum Financial has a data lake with employee records in Amazon S3 registered with AWS Lake Formation. The organization has 200 data analysts across 15 departments who need access to different subsets of 500 tables. The current named resource approach requires managing thousands of individual grants. The data engineer needs to simplify permission management while maintaining granular access control. Which approach should the data engineer implement? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option D. LFDAG's Lake Formation tag-based access control are specifically designed for large-scale data permission management. With LFDAGs, instead of creating individual grants for each principal resource combination, 200 analysts x 500 tables equals 100,000 potential grants. The engineer assigns tags to tables and grants tag expressions to principals. For this scenario, the formula reduces to approximately n principals plus n resources operations. LFDAGs support inheritance where tables inherit tags from databases and columns inherit from tables, further simplifying management. IAM policies do not provide the same granular data-level control that Lake Formation offers for data catalog resources. S3 bucket policies operate at the object level and cannot enforce table or column-level access control. Athena workgroups control query costs and output locations, but do not provide fine-grained data access control. Question 19. Northwind Retail operates an Amazon Redshift serverless workgroup for their analytics team. They need to ingest clickstream data from an Amazon Kinesis data stream with 20 shards in near real time. Currently, the pipeline uses Kinesis data streams, Amazon Data Firehose, S3, and copy commands with a 5-minute delay. The team wants to reduce latency to under 30 seconds. What should the data engineer implement? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option D. Redshift streaming ingestion creates a materialized view that consumes directly from Kinesis data streams, eliminating the intermediate S3 staging layer entirely. With auto-refresh enabled, data flows from the stream to Redshift in near real time, achieving sub-30-second latency. This approach can ingest hundreds of megabytes per second. Using Lambda to execute frequent copy commands creates operational complexity and may encounter Lambda concurrency issues. Firehose with 0-second buffering still requires S3 staging and copy command orchestration, adding latency beyond the stream itself. A Flink application with JDBC sync adds unnecessary operational overhead when Redshift natively supports streaming ingestion. Question 20. Adatum Corp has a Redshift provisioned cluster that data analysts use for complex queries. The cluster has 4 Rathri XLPlus nodes. The data engineering team in a separate AWS account needs read access to the sales and inventory tables without creating a separate copy of the data. Which solution provides cross-account data access with the least operational overhead? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. Redshift data sharing provides live, read-only access to data across clusters and accounts without copying or moving data. The producer cluster creates a data share containing specific schemas or tables and grants access to the consumer account. The consumer can query the shared data directly using their own compute resources. Data sharing requires R-Athri nodes, which the cluster uses. Nightly glue ETL exports create data latency and storage duplication. Redshift federated queries connect to RDS and Aurora PostgreSQL databases, not other Redshift clusters. DMS continuous replication creates a full copy of the data in the consumer account, adding storage costs and operational complexity. That is the end of practice exam number 10. Review the questions you missed, then come back for the next batch.